live from the cell. This is Osai, I'm the mixtape man. We trying to put this West Coast thing back on the map. Northern Cali's where I'm starting because this way
it's time for historical book club. We're gonna get on in just a minute.
Northern Cali's where I'm starting because this way is at. Yeah, it's that time, everybody. It's about that time.
It's your favorite second and fourth Thursday. That's when we are now. And I'm still celebrating my new way to film the show here. So I hope everybody's coming on tonight. It's been a little quiet lately, but I know you guys can come back and see stuff later, which we very much appreciate. Seriously, I'm so excited when people listen to me. I'm telling you.
Nice.
Yeah. So, how's your week been? How's your 2 weeks been?
It's been good, man. It's been all over the place, man. I did
Me too.
went to the Afro Comic Con.
What's that?
Helped to DJ a show at the Afro Comic Con. They had like to me it was more like it was like a fashion show mixture with a Wakanda kind of tribute.
Oh, cool.
It was pretty cool. So
yeah. Oh man, as soon as you said that, there's a writer I like a lot. It's one of these things where she doesn't like how anybody defines her, and so she's doing Wakanda comics now, and so so she's gotten like some more attention for doing the Shuri comic, but she's done a ton of stuff before that, and so I was looking at this post. She was saying like, "No, I'm not an African futurist," and I'm like, "Well, then what the fuck are we supposed to call you?"
Right.
Okay, you don't write speculative fiction, like, oh, what the hell? What are you gonna call people? It's very as is said sometime, where the Trump administration is trying to remove guidelines to identify transgender people to protect transgender people against discrimination, and that's just very, very hard. Transgender people are at high risk of murder. They face a lot of discrimination, difficulties in housing, employment. They face a lot of violence, and so we're just trying to keep speaking about it. And I think that for a lot of people, gender is just so taken for granted that they just can't wrap their heads around somebody not being a boy and not being a girl.
Right.
And that's much more so, because I think, like, okay, maybe people can't understand being gay, but they can understand having feelings. They can understand having emotional feelings. They can understand having sexual feelings. That's not like a foreign realm. But for many of us, I mean, cisgender people, we haven't needed to think about who we are in that way. And a friend of a friend was saying something on his Facebook post about how he doesn't understand how someone identifies as transgender because he doesn't identify as heterosexual. It's just how he is.
Right.
And so my friend answered him with a definition, because that's one of the things people will talk about, like, okay, is this gender, is this identity? And what I said is that these are a lot of words with each of these words has different interpretations to people.
Right.
And then beside that, we are talking about complex things. And so what I said to this, I said to, my comment to this person would be, gender's not how you identify yourself, but it is how other people identify themselves. So, it's difficult to try and get past when somebody's stuck in the mentality of not wanting to think beyond themselves, I find that frustrating. But I don't fault people for I don't fault anyone for being confused or perplexed.
Right, right.
It's hard it's hard when they're disrespectful about it. I had a situation I was in where this young gay guy was talking about how ridiculous it was that people want these words used and these words used, and he thought that he was like off the hook because he was gay. And okay, what I said was, okay, this is like in my how to talk to millennials guidelines. I said, you need to educate yourself. There's a lot more to it. And the little brat went off. It was a little bit like, God, he was very, very rude. So, but that is what I tell people most of the time. Because my head was practically just spinning. He was going from, I get annoyed. It can be annoying when people are so uptight about you calling them by the right thing. I feel that if people are trying their best, I am not interested in, if I'm trying my best, I don't care if somebody's offended,
Right.
But there's names, and all of that, there's he, she's pronouns and all of that, but then there's how somebody feels about who they are, and you can't say that for an outsider, and it's just wrong as an outsider. It's wrong to criticize how anyone arrives at their identity.
Right, right.
And who they are, and it's just very hard to define, and we need to just listen. So, but anyway, that's been going on in the United States, and it's just, beside the fact of Trump, I'm not sure where he's at with throwing transgender people out of the military. And speaking of our military, guess where they're headed?
Where?
The border.
Ooh, so what are they about to do?
About to try to stop the migrant caravan.
Ooh.
Okay, you've been following that? Okay, there's a big thousands of people from Honduras are traveling together. It's a caravan, the line of people is 2 miles long.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of people, and they're trying to get to the U.S., and they're all escaping violence, and they're making a really difficult journey because they have to. And under international law, anybody is supposed to be able to arrive at a port of entry, a legal point of entry, and claim asylum. And so that's what they could be advised, but what's happened, as we've discussed, people that have are risking getting their kids taken away if they are taken in by the border control and all that.
Right,
so,
right.
But so then some of them are going to try and enter the country illegally, which is if they get caught, that's a lot of problems. And even if they don't get caught, it's just extremely difficult for people to make it. But all of that to them is better than the alternative. And so my dad was posting on Facebook that it was about that it was like an election gift to Trump, because he's going around telling, he's saying that these people are these are gang members and all, just look at them. Most of them are a whole bunch of them are young people with kids.
Right,
A huge, almost A lot of them are kids. I was listening to an interview with a 14-year-old who's traveling on his own.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So was this caravan gonna just like bust through and just
Yeah.
like, I'm coming through and that's it?
They're trying to. Well, yeah, they crossed over into Mexico. The Mexican police were trying to stop. Like fired tear gas and stuff at them. We're trying to stop them crossing over the border, and they did because Mexico doesn't have the strongest military, and they probably like bribed a lot of guards with whatever they had. I mean that too. It's pretty hard to secure a border. So they could have asked for asylum in Mexico, in fairness. So traditionally, you're supposed to ask for asylum at the first country you arrive to. So, I mean, and that's the problem, you know, that we've been talking about with Italy and all, you know, like that's why Italy is so mad about migrants coming to where they are, because it's, you know, because their port people just do wind up applying for asylum there. So that's why they diverted them to a bunch of migrants a couple weeks ago or months ago to Spain, so that they could do their port of entry there and request asylum there instead of having so many asylum seekers in Italy. So, you know, they can blame the Honduran refugees for not asking. You know, I guess some of them don't feel safe in Mexico either. But I mean, I don't really understand it, but it's going to be ugly. I mean, but so Trump is sending the military to assist the border guards. It's ugly.
Wow.
Yeah. The world in general is pretty ugly. So, you know, the last I've checked, there's been 12 bombs sent to Democratic leaders, to George Soros, a major donor, and then to the Obamas, to the Clintons, to Biden, to Maxine Waters, to prominent Democrats. So that's just upsetting. I mean, it means it's timed and organized, and so it's not like, it's bad enough to have like just nutcases sending bombs, but this was timed and organized, and you know, it's scary. And then then unfortunately some of the Dems are still like dumb enough to blame Trump's rhetoric, and you know, he's just gonna feed off that. Okay, like, don't blame him, it'll just give them more to be defensive about. So yeah, that's pretty scary. I mean, they're checking to see if the bombs originated in Florida, but you know, they did. I mean, the problem is, I mean, you know, very few people that voted for Trump. Well, most of the people who voted for Trump still support him.
Right.
So, you know, that's why I'm upset about all these 2016 relics going around talking to people, because it's like, okay, y'all didn't like convince anybody last time, and you're not going to this time. All you're doing is just talking to your same audience. You know, all you're like fawning people, and I'm just really nervous about it. You know, I mean, supposedly Biden's thinking about running, and Kerry's thinking about running, and Burndog is thinking about running, and like, get out, you people. Ugh. You know.
Exactly, right.
You know, I want the ones I love, like Biden, to step back. I want the ones I hate, like Burndog, to step back. So, I'm fair. You know, okay, it's like, if my guy's not, you know, I'll give up my guy, but other people need to give up their guy. I want Kamala, man. Kamala Harris just made a trip to Idaho. She's Iowa. Iowa. You know, it's like, okay, when they visit Iowa, that means they're really looking. And so she's going to, you know, she just needs to start introducing herself to people. You know, they don't know her. and yeah, so she'll be good. I want Kamala. Okay, so we can start to get to our world news. There's a lot going on with with elections in a lot of different elections in several different countries. One of them is Afghanistan, and Afghanistan has had 2 polling places bombed in the past week, and I just was watching footage of people lining up voting, just saying like, we don't care, we're going to do it anyway, and I'm like, man, that's guts. It's been postponed. In Afghanistan, the Electoral Commission said it was extending voting in the country's parliamentary election to Sunday after several polling stations failed to open. And not only are they getting bomb threats, they are having all the problems with all the mechanization and all of that. So Afghanistan, we are thinking about you. A lot of women were interviewed, and they want more. They want more women in parliament. Don't we all? And related, last week I had a pretty good time registering voters at Faith Food Fridays.
Nice.
Yeah, which is this really wonderful service mission here in Vallejo. They give out food twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays. If you go to Bible study, you get a box on Wednesdays. You get a box of food, and if you go to church, you get a box of food.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So they were doing voter registration, and I just really admire Ben and Marianne, the couple that run it. They do so much for the community. They give out clothes and stuff too. And they're trying to protect people's rights as well. So I registered 4 or 5 people, and I was I was especially pleased because one of them said he didn't know if he could vote because he was a felon. And I said, well, yeah, you can. If you've been released, you can. You can have your voting rights restored by registering. I looked the rules over carefully. I wanted to make sure I wasn't getting him into trouble. But so I did the thing, and then I said, congratulations, you're a voter. Yeah, that was. And the other thing we were doing was just we were offering people to look up their voter status, and a lot more people were registered than I thought. So that was very cool.
Nice.
But yeah, it was cool. It was exciting to register people and just say congratulations. And a friend of mine who I know from there, from Faith Food Fridays, wasn't there on Friday, but I'd been bugging her to get to register, and she did register. So she counts for Faith Food Fridays too, because I know her from there. So yeah, it's a cool place. It's, every Wednesday they have a dinner, Bible study, and then you get a food box. So yeah, and it's cool because it's just one of these places where you never know who you're going to wind up talking to, and I love that. So, okay, Afghanistan. We're sending you our thoughts. So we were talking about the election in Rwanda last time, about a couple of the women that were running. Okay, and they were. I've been following them on Twitter. Victoria Amuloza, and so there's actually not too much going on there other than what we're following with the election. it's oh no, okay, this is different. Okay, so that is the Rwanda election. So we're gonna move from there to Ethiopia, because we always have the coolest news from Ethiopia. Okay, remember remember like at the Olympics 2 years ago when an Ethiopian when an Ethiopian athlete went like this?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I definitely remember that.
Yeah. Okay. His name is Feisa Lilesa. And so he has returned back to Ethiopia from exile.
Oh.
Yeah.
So he was sent to exile for that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow! I
He
didn't
didn't
know
go
that.
back home. Well, he didn't go back home after that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was the rebel thing. So yes, he's back.
Wow.
He's back since our friend Prime Minister Ahmed Abe has made a lot of political reforms, which we've been following, and so that is very cool. And what has also happened in Ethiopia was they've just elected their first female president. See, this is I know.
And I saw that you sent that to
I
me.
did?
I saw that. That's cool.
Isn't that cool?
That's cool. Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah, that is cool. It's it's ceremonial, but it's still cool. And Abiy Ahmed has just appointed women to half of his government's ministerial posts, including the job of defense minister.
Nice.
Yeah, he said he thinks women are more honest and will do a better job. And he appointed a woman as the minister of peace. So that is awesome, man. We're just like, Ethiopia just keeps having the coolest news.
Nice. That's a good thing.
Yeah. I know that was just really compelling. He made that image. Okay. One of the things that's happened. We also follow Liberia, and George Weah, the former football champion, is the president there, and he's just announced free education at public universities.
Nice.
Which is very cool, but that made me think of Wakanda and the Saturday Night Live Black Jeopardy with Wakanda.
Yeah.
Yeah, about Wakanda's free universities. So I don't know. It would be great to see a little bit of Wakanda in Liberia. They are still trying to track down 100 million banknotes that have disappeared, and former Prime Minister Ellen Johnson Sirleaf's son has been implicated in some of that. It's this case. The case is in a lot of countries. It's just extremely difficult to route out corruption because so many people are related to each other, and so even if they're not participating in crime themselves, they don't necessarily want to turn over their family members. So that's kind of tricky. Okay, and so we've also been following Nigeria, where there is a woman running against the two top guys, and we talked about her last week, and that she is basically she's 20 years younger than the other contestants and candidates. President Buhari, there was a bill in Nigeria called Not Too Young to Run, a landmark piece of legislation that was conceived, championed, and accomplished by young Nigerians, so that people, because it was like crazy. It was like you needed to be like I think you had to be over 40 or something, maybe even over 50. Something really ridiculous. So the bill has become an active part. So they made it legal for spring chickens in their 50s to run for office.
Spring chickens.
Yeah. Relatively speaking, and again, it's another country that has like 60% of the population is under 30. Why are there so many young people in the world, man? I don't get it.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, but I suppose.
Trust me, there was a lot when we were young too. So
no, not as many.
You don't think so?
No.
Why not?
Nobody talked to. Well, hey, I'm older than you.
I think also a lot of people just didn't talk about it. I think now everybody's more vocal than they were back then. So.
Well, because there's more avenues. But I had virtually no guidance in my life. I mean, and there was nothing when I was in college, nothing when I was in graduate school, nothing when I was at the jobs I had. I mean, nobody was interested in me. Nobody looked out for me or anything. Well, I mean, a few people did. A few people did. But when I hear how coddled young people are today, and how many people talk about our youth and supporting our youth and all of that, I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, they're very. That's why I think we hear about them more, because in the middle of being coddled, so to speak,
they are coddled.
You also, like I said, it makes them more boisterous, more like you were explaining your interaction.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day, they were more, even if they didn't agree with you, they were a little bit nicer about it.
Seriously. They had yeah. I mean, I say this, a lot of people I know, or a lot of friends of mine, were like way alternative, off the mainstream, and I wasn't, and that much. I mean, in that way, I didn't.
But most people when
but
you
they
were
were
a kid,
still, but they were still respectful to elders. That's what I'm saying.
They came around their parents. They knew that.
No, I mean, I'm talking about being a young adult. I'm talking about what it's like for me to be a young adult in my 20s. Listening to the Conscious Daughters.
Right. When I was in my 20s, boy, like I said, when I was in front of adults, I wasn't arguing with you.
Yeah.
that just wasn't gonna happen.
Yeah. That's an issue having. So, but anyway, we can't. I mean, we're talking about the United States, and I mean, it's just different in every country. I mean, generationally, people in their young people in Liberia right now are the first generation that's come of age without civil war happening, and so it's very serious that so many of them are underemployed or unemployed because they can they could be incited to violence again. So that's the problem in some of these countries, and so it's just, people have just gone through really different things. So, okay, that's in Nigeria. Okay, so we're talking about all these the 50-something-year-old spring chickens is duking it out with the septuagenarians. 2 Muslim midwives have been killed in northeastern Nigeria by Boko Haram, which is the Islamic terrorist group in Nigeria. They're the ones that kidnapped the schoolgirls, that continue to kidnap and are extremely violent. President Buhari, I don't know. It's hard to say whether he could have done more or not, or well, I think he could have. Part of the problem with some of these countries is whether they're going to accept military assistance from the Western world, and they supposedly accept. There were a few U.S. service members helping them with the kidnapping, try and find the girls, but I don't know. The Islamic, it's still very active, and so both of these midwives worked for the International Committee of the Red Cross, and they were kidnapped along with another female aid worker, and assassinated. So, and that kind of does relate to some of the stuff that's going on in Congo right now, where health workers, aid workers, and healthcare workers are being targeted by assassins. And that is about pretty much one of the very worst things that I've heard of. Just recently, the rebels just killed 13 civilians and abducted a dozen children, and the rebels are attacking health officials who are fighting the Ebola epidemic. So you're just like, what the hell? What are people thinking? I mean, these healthcare workers are there trying to help them from dying, and so that's just very scary, very scary. And so what's been said is that by the authorities, is we suspect the attackers are part of a new rebel movement we are yet to identify. There's a lot of rebel movements in Congo, so I guess, a new one might, what's a new one? But, so, analysts blame the upsurge of violence on intensified instability caused by competition between political actors in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is supposed to be having elections in December, which we have been following for a long time. And it's just very scary. They have released some of the journalists who were arrested. Journalists have been arrested for writing about articles about misappropriation of rations for police cadets. And there's a reporter who's been detained for 2 weeks because of defamation over 2 articles she wrote about redundancies at a local bank. And so the Democratic Republic of Congo ranks 154th out of 180 countries on the Press Freedom Index. Yeah. So, we have Ebola, we have health workers getting killed. Elections in Congo are a real concern right now. So we're going to take a little break right now, and we will come back and talk about some more things.